All right. Darryll Stinson in the house.
What's up? What's poppin'?
Let's go. Let's go.
Let's get it.
Thanks for being here today, brother. Appreciate it. As always, when we get together, I feel like it's going to be a powerful conversation.
I agree.
And excited for Impact Effect 24 next month, man. We're almost there. We're like 30 something days away.
I agree. I agree, bro. It's crazy.
Crazy.
It's crazy. Why does it look like I have a smudge on my screen? Do I? I don't know what's going on. I gotta get this right. Your stuff's all crispy, man. What do you have? I'm tired. Like I look like I'm disappearing. You all crispy over here, bro. What's up, man? What do you got going?
Dude, I was telling Nicole Kramer earlier, we were chatting. You set the camera up, you set the mics up. Every time I get into a different Zoom, Google Meet, StreamYard, right? Like it always breaks. You got to set it up, start from scratch, redo it all. I'm like, man, I got to start working in like 10 minutes of AV prep for these,
I do, man. So, dude, help me out, bro. I gotta get my stuff together. This looks terrible right now.
I got you, man. You're looking good, bro.
Yeah.
All we need is you.
But
Your presence,
I got the
man.
bars, bro. I got the bars, so we can drop some bars. You know what I'm saying?
Well, let's jump in, man. Let's get it rocking and rolling. Today we're going to talk about leadership. Impact Effect 24 is around leadership. And my first question to you, Darryll, is just, what does leadership mean to you?
Man, I cannot ever get John Maxwell's voice out of my head when he says leadership is influence, bro. I learned too much from him. And every time I hear leadership, I'm like, leadership is influence, leadership is influence. And it's important because it's like, it's so simple, but I think where people are really trying to define is like, what does it take to be a great leader? Which that's different. Like that's a much, broader conversation than just like what is leadership. So for me, leadership is influence.
I like it.
Yeah.
Have you ever, who's influenced you the most? Who's the most impactful leader in your life that you've experienced?
Man.
Deep question, I know.
I mean, I can always go the spiritual route and say God, right? Like, because that's true. Like he's always guiding me. Without that, I'd be lost, I can say self. Coaches wise, man, I've gone in seasons. There's been coaches that have been, quantum doors for me. In different seasons. So it's like, man, it depends on in what season or in what context. And when it comes to money or when it comes to relationships, when it comes to like high ticket sales or when it comes to communication. So like, it's hard to pick, man. It's hard to pick. I can't pick.
Let me ask you a question. Where does your heart leading you right now?
Where's my heart? Myself.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'd love to hear some of the inner conversations or some of those monumental moments where you've showed up for yourself as leadership, right? Like that's, I was talking to Brian, one of our speakers, and we were talking heavily the other day about it. Like it starts with us, right? And stepping into that power.
It does. Well, we know that all
about
great
a story where that's happened, man.
Well, just recently, right? I mean, you were just talking about the book that I just finished writing, and it required a lot of self leadership. One of the things that actually was interesting, this was a lesson I learned in when I was running the other day as well, because it's so embarrassing to actually talk about the amount because I'm a former elite athlete, and when I tell you how much I'm running right now, you're gonna be like so embarrassed that you know me. But I'm trying to
run more than me, bro. So let's just leave it there.
1 mile. I'm trying to get to 1 mile. I didn't condition to do long distance. Okay, I was a sprinter. So 1 mile. Okay, and the other day I couldn't even like really finish without like I could finish right like but without like getting gassed or whatever. And I was so frustrated with myself because I had broke the consistency where I was doing them like basically every day. And then I had a powerful thought.
Your mic's cutting in and out.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, too much passion. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good now.
Yeah, yeah. So I had an interesting thought after I finished, my terrible effort at a mile. I said, I took this break, where I was walking and typing a social media post on my phone, and I said to myself, man, I could probably do that again. And it's funny how many times there's these mental beliefs, ways of thinking that keep us limited in our life. Because part of what I've been telling myself prior to that insight was, okay, I just got to get to doing a mile a day. And I limited myself at a mile because I thought I was only thinking about doing it in one swoop. I didn't think about taking a break. I didn't think about none of that. I just was like, that's what I'm physically able to do. And just that little mind thing of like, oh, I can just do this again. If I just take a 15, 30-minute break, I can just do another one. It's like, then I can just double my output. Like something as simple as that way of thought was a way that I led myself to a accelerated result. And there's all types of these opportunities within our everyday lives when we're on a Zoom call, when we're running a business meeting, when we're speaking on a stage or doing a podcast like I'm doing right now. And there's all of these moments where when we have a awareness of ourselves and what's subconsciously driving our beliefs and behaviors, we can consciously choose the things that align more accurately with the life that we desire. So when it came time for me to write my book, I had to have multiple moments of that self leadership. Oh man, here's a story about, a time where I was suicidal and I had to run in the middle of the night just to shift my state to get out of that realm of thought. Oh, I didn't want to open up that cavity again and feel those emotions again. But I know that I've got to lead myself to make this decision, right? And so I tell myself a new story. I focus on the people that I know that the story can help, et cetera, et cetera. It's impact effect, bro. And so you focus on other people, you focus on the value that it's going to do, and you just vulnerably open yourself up as I did. And I led myself to make the choice that was more in line for ultimately the leader that I say that I want to be, the impact that I say that I'm here to make. And that is not a decision that I mastered in the first book that I wrote.
You spark so much in my brain as you're going through that. My own recent, battle with mindset and leveling up and pushing and pushing and pushing. These instances happen almost multiple times a day, I think, and it really takes us to be the leader, to be aware, right? Have that hyper awareness, be on the lookout for it, educate, converse with others around it, right? And I was thinking as you were saying that, like, what has come up in your journey, your life, around some of those opportunities? Of course, the book yesterday, the impact of that, but can you bring us down kind of a road where you may have been in business strategically with a client or something of that, where you kind of had to take that same leadership style awareness?
100%. 100%. Oh man, I was gonna tell the first story that came out of my. I was like, I don't know if I have permission to tell that one. But all the time, man. I'll just try to talk around the specifics of the one that just came to mind because it came up and I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
But I legit was on a sales call recently, and the individual was like kind of wanting in, but like financially was like, man, I've felt aligned before. I've invested, and it was really like I misled myself. Like I didn't. That wasn't the right choice. I thought it was aligned, and it wasn't. So like as much as this feels like it's the right thing for me to do, and obviously I know you're great and it'll work for me. I'm afraid that I'm misleading myself.
Wow.
There was a version of me that came in that moment and was like, man, I know exactly what that feels like. I've done that before. Now listen to this part of it. Maybe I should just like let her off the hook, let him off the hook. Maybe I should just maybe let him in the program for free. Like maybe I should like do something that might not be the best, but it feels easier for me because it's sometimes challenging for me, Darryl, to really stand strong in leadership when people are in crisis. Because when I was in crisis, I always wanted somebody to like grab my hand, and so I always try to be that person, which is not a bad thing. But in the context of investing in a program that's going to require that individual to bring their whole self into it, they have to learn how to be more resourceful than that. If you quit every time you hit an obstacle, you are not prepared for greatness. You're never going to be great if every time it gets a little challenging or you hit a roadblock, you're like, oh, guess I'll just turn around. We don't have the money. You know how many things I did that I didn't have the money for? So rather than to let that part of myself leave, oh, okay, I breathe for a second. I could feel myself contracting, wanting to shrink, and kind of be like, oh, it's okay, and I breathe, I open, and I said, okay. So, other than finances, is there any other reason why you would see that this would be an issue? Oh, no, no, no. Other finances is really the only other thing. Okay, so are you open to getting resourceful about how to figure that out? Okay, yeah. And within in 5 minutes, oh, I forgot that I've got this client conversation coming up and this coming up and oh, okay, okay, you trusted yourself before. Okay, what was it that you were aware of when you made the bad decision but ignored? And is that present? Are you ignoring something right now? How do
I
you
was
get
gonna say,
clear?
is that present in this moment?
Is that
Yeah.
present? Are you ignoring your voice that's saying no, like you're supposed to write your book first or something? And it's like, oh no, that's actually not present. Okay, so this isn't that.
Yeah.
Now, had that person said this was, then I'd be like, oh well, then man, you need to like follow your truth. And so just that openness, that leadership of myself not to shrink created that openness in that conversation in sales, which led to ultimately that person enrolling in the program, right? And being stoked and grateful that I led them through that process. Now, that's where it starts, but that's not where it finishes because you and I know now it's about the message getting on stages and in front of people and her doing her work. And now that ripple effect is the impact effect.
That's it. That's it.
Yep.
But I think with your style of awareness, you could have taken the comfortable road. You could have said, or based on how you've felt in previous stages or states or times, and let them in or did something, but that wasn't going to solve the problem, right? Because
Yeah.
that was the by you taking that road, it's actually giving them the easy road too. And to your
Exactly.
point, you hit bumps, you get bruises, like this is leadership. If you're gonna build something, do something, create impact, it's not gonna be easy.
Right.
And there's no one saying it's gonna, and if they are, run away as fast as you can. Um, what a great example of leadership. What a great example of that hyper awareness for you to look inward first and then lead afterward, right? And you know, leadership and sales is essentially the same thing in a lot of ways, right? Because you're leading that person based on what you're hearing, right? So part of your sales process being curious, listening, asking questions, but you're leading them to what you truly believe is the solution because you have an open heart to not sell something that someone, like you said, if they were feeling those negative things in the past and they're feeling them now, let's talk about it. And this isn't for you, right? Like hands up, all good, maybe another time. But I think it starts with that level of integrity, right? Like you're intentional about being about being and having integrity. And
Yeah.
that level of intention around it, I think, is extremely important, especially with the awareness. And I think that's such an important keyword or term, right? And it's, going back to impact effect, intentional is one of our themes, right? Lead with intention, create
Hmm.
that vision, right?
Hmm.
Which you're going to be talking about. You're going to be bringing down the house, right? At impact effect 24. Let's go.
I'm gonna play my role, man. I'm gonna play my role. It's subtle, man. I hope people can get it.
It's speaking of impact 24, do you want to give us a little teaser, a little preview of what what might be coming from Darryll?
Man, I'll give you a little teaser.
Don't make me beg
I
for it, bro. Don't
what,
make me beg, man.
what came to mind is I was like, I got a video clip somewhere out there I should just play because it's like that's what tease it better than I can probably do in this moment. Because there's this clip that I have online around vulnerable storytelling. I delivered it at the Business Scaling Experience in West Virginia, where Magic Johnson was the headliner,
Nice.
and the crowd was similar to the crowd that's going to be at Impact Effect. There's like some entrepreneurs that were really high level, but then there was like a lot of like, community members, local folks. There were, CEOs of just like, like the banks and like the companies that were, local, kind of like Chamber of Commerce type of crowd. Um, and I wanted to talk about storytelling, or that's what they tasked me to do. And it was like, man, I want the entrepreneurs to get value and know how to grow their business with storytelling, right? Like, how can I get on more stages, get more opportunities, get more leads from podcasts and webinars and things like that? But I didn't want the other folks to feel like they got to be like professional speakers or have high ticket coaching offers in order to like apply the principles in a way that was meaningful to their life and business. I wanted them to see the through line of like, hey, take the same principles, send out your newsletter, run your meeting, cast vision to your team, boost morale for your employees, and market your business.
Of
And
course.
so I talked about vulnerability being the new currency. And the reason why is because we all know how valuable attention is and how noisy the internet is. And I believe that vulnerability is how you cut through the noise. It's what
100%.
causes you to stick out. One of the things I learned from writing my book in 2 days, I was trying to like work with Chat GPT like prior to I got to that writing retreat to like figure it out. I wanted to like master it in like a week. And you know how we get obsessive. Like I watch everything. I'll take all the courses. I'm gonna binge this. I'm gonna master and rip it. And I was working with Chat GPT and I was noticing that like it had to learn me to even do a good enough job to write something that sounded good enough for me to consider. So it was getting all of its intelligence that I liked from me, like in terms of my voice. And it's like, man, like that human factor, that uniqueness to us can never be replaced with artificial intelligence. But is that what's actually being expressed? Or are we communicating in our lives in a way that can be artificial replaced with artificial intelligence?
It's
And for
powerful.
most people, everyone's talking, but not a lot of people are saying anything. And so my goal is to help them to say something that's going to resonate, to cause people, whether it's, clients on the internet or kids in the house, to pause and pay attention.
It's it's the human factor, I
It
believe, is
is.
what you're describing
It
compared to
is.
the artificial factor, right? Like that humanizing, that creation, that thought process, your experiences, your beliefs, your values, those situations and scenarios where you've had heightened emotion, right? Whether positive, right? Oh, this is awesome. I just crushed it. Or that negative, man, I'm having suicidal thoughts, right? Let's go to both of those polarizing spectrums and everything
Mhm.
in between, right? But those are created based on what we're receiving, based on our previous understandings, all those things that have been in what we've experienced in our lives. And I agree with you, brother. You can't take that away. There's no AI. Because there's no one in here all the time, right? And I can pull something out of the grave based on a conversation that you and I have had that pulls me back to an experience that I never would have put in a GBT4 mechanism, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that's the beauty of the human connection piece, the conversation to be had is those things are unique and happen in real time. And you may not be able to share an experience unless you have a conversation with someone and they spark it. right? I was talking to a friend the other day, and they brought up a memory from, they said, hey, remember when we were sitting on the stoop over in Dorchester, before we went to New York? And I was like, wow, I that was a period of time that I just wouldn't have thought about, right? And it sparked up the week around that, what was happening, who I was friends with. And one of the things that I realized, a pivotal moment in my life, and it allowed me to continue to navigate that thought and to understand it and download it again and create a perspective around it, a perspective in which was drastically different from when I was in it in real time, right? A perspective that lives within my brain in this moment based on what I've experienced since I was, 19, and where I'm at 34 years of age today. So I'm with you, man. Don't get me on a rant about human connection over AI. I'll piss off a lot of people.
There you go.
I'll talk about this for 4 hours, man. I won't let you off on this Friday, Darryll.
I get it, and it's good, man. And then that's what I love about the room that we're bringing together for the conference, because I know that the speakers, because we've had conversations and have had time to really start to build those relationships, is going to lead the audience in that way. And the audience is going to have the opportunity to lean into discomfort or away from it, to lean into this edge of growth or away from it, to go, oh, okay, yeah, I know, I human connection matters. I'll tell my heart story more, versus where in my life am I not actually being vulnerable? Where in my life, in my leadership, is there a call for greater levels of openness within myself? Oh, snap. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, man, and I feel like as long as people are willing to like face that part of themselves, like the growth opportunity is like monumental.
Yeah.
It's monumental.
And I think too, man, it's one of those things where if you're not a vulnerable person, give us 20% vulnerability, right? Start tomorrow with just 20%. You know,
Yeah.
Darryll, you're a vulnerable person, right? You're probably higher up on that percentage, right? And I would say, I was speaking at an event yesterday, and I shared, I'm like, I'm probably 98%, right? Like, I probably overshare in some cases, when there's not a deep connection in those moments, right? But I would rather be honest, truthful, and real. And it's interesting, like one of the discussions I had with someone the other day around it was, vulnerability doesn't need to be all the bad things.
Yeah.
Vulnerability doesn't need to be all the things you struggle with, right? And in leadership, like the executive team, I've experienced the executive team celebrates the wins, right? And the middle management doesn't get it. And then it gets watered down and doesn't get to the entry level associates. And it's like, well, we got to share and be vulnerable about the wins too, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you don't want to sound like you're bragging, right? And I'm saying this in a fashion of, don't go and say, hey, we just hit the 10 million in revenue on your social media, right? Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about having deep conversations with the folks who allowed you to get to 10 million, right? And being vulnerable enough to share that it was because of everybody, or it was because of them specifically that this happened, right? There's some vulnerability in that. I think there's a lot of vulnerability in celebrating some of the wins and giving credit where it's due, where sometimes leaders aren't vulnerable enough to say, hey, it wasn't Jim Morris who made this happen today. It wasn't Jim Morris that got our, 12,000th subscriber. It was Darryll Stinson, so let's transition this, positivity and gratefulness and thankfulness to Darryll. Darryll was the reason why. Right. And I think that takes vulnerability as well. What do you think?
Man, I think people's paradigm around vulnerability are so twisted and wired. I think that it's so much broader than what we typically tend to discuss. Vulnerability isn't just like what you're sharing, it's also how you're sharing it, right? And so, like, what you're saying, yes, there's a spectrum of vulnerability I call from pain to power or from trauma to truth. It's just as vulnerable as it is for me to talk about my trauma as it is for me to stand in my truth. It's just as vulnerable for me to talk about when, I was abused when I was younger as it is to talk about, high ticket sales in front of people with poverty consciousness. Both require the same level of openness within myself. Okay. Now, that openness is where I feel like people don't focus on as much. They think they're only being vulnerable by what they say. Hey, I'm telling my truth, or I'm telling my vulnerable story. I'm traveling the spectrum, but I'm not telling it from a place that's open and connected within myself. And a good place to look is like I call it emotional alignment. It's like, right, does the emotions you're expressing when you tell the story match the emotions of that you were experiencing of the story that you're telling? So when the story was happening when you were 17, 18, 23, 40, those emotions that were present, are they being expressed in today when you're telling that story? That's emotional alignment. That's one way to correct the how of the vulnerability. Now I can feel what you felt when you felt it versus feel how you feel about how you felt. You want me to say it again?
I was gonna say, I got it, and
Okay, cool.
I totally
Cool.
downloaded it, but say it one more time,
I'll try.
because this is a powerful statement, man.
It is.
This is a
It is.
very powerful
It is.
soundbite right now.
It
Very
is,
powerful.
man. Let's see if I can say it again.
So powerful that I'm gonna put the website to buy tickets to come see you next
There,
month at the
there
bottom.
you go. Come on, man. It is. It is because there's a way to be vulnerable from stage and be manipulative, and there's a way to be actual genuine and to actually follow what the power of what vulnerability can bring to a space.
Totally.
And I don't want to ever you know teach it in a way that people would misuse it. Now people are going to do what they're going to do. So I'm not saying this so that you have a shock factor or a wow factor. I'm saying this because in order to reach people who are in pain, they have to relate to the pain that you were once in.
Yeah.
Right? John Maxwell 101. And everybody communicates, only a few people connect. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. Okay? So when you're telling stories, it's important that you express the emotions that you felt while you were going through the story, not the emotions that you feel now in the present day about how you felt back then. We speak from present tense, not past tense, primarily. And that emotional lineup is important because people don't move unless they're moved emotionally.
Yeah.
People don't change their behavior. They don't stop eating bad things and eating good things. They don't start leading more courageously instead of leading more, with less courage. They don't start, valuing human capital instead of just like passing out as many business cards as possible. Like they don't actually change that behavior unless they are intrinsically motivated to do so. And that's primarily gets sparked with emotion and then justified with logic.
Yep.
And so our ability to tap into the emotions of the audience or the listener, if it's a one-on-one type of setting, is extremely powerful in all types of scenarios, especially when it comes to growing a business.
Totally. Totally. I'm
Yeah.
thinking through of just, even in conversations, you pull in a team member one on one in my office. It's the same way you need to communicate to a stage of 2,000 people, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if it's 1 or 1 million. You have to feel that level of vulnerability and emotion, and it's got to be real, right? Because we've all been in that office setting, pulled into that room to have a conversation, and you walked out of there feeling like you were spoken to, not spoken or engaged with, right? And it's like that doesn't feel good.
No.
That doesn't make me want to follow you as a leader. That doesn't make me want to go recruit more people to the team who I know or who I've worked with previously, right? Like those things don't come out of that office visit, but I remember those times where it did, where someone leveled with me and was like, "Man, I know how you're feeling." And I can think of one specific instance where, you know, I had someone say, "Hey, you're trying to fight your way through the company. You're a young kid who's really smart, and this is the only way you know, but it's not going to work." And I did it too, and I went through that, right? And like that relationship morphed and maximized almost instantly. Man, fired up for next month, dude.
Me too,
Fired up.
man.
Little
Me too,
teaser
bro.
we got going here.
I know, bro.
Got me
I
rocking
know.
and rolling.
I know. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining today, Darryll. I
Yeah.
appreciate you just jumping on and you know, chatting it up and giving people a little teaser about Impact Effect next month. Darryll's going to be our keynote speaker and facilitator, and he's just a powerhouse. And I just can't wait. I can't wait for the folks in the room to experience it. And you know, we signed up a couple folks in Super VIP the other day, and you know, had an event and brought in some new folks that I didn't know. And one of the things that we were talking about was how different this is because of the speakers in the room, because they care. They want to consult. They want to spend time with you. They want to answer your questions. They want to help, and they want it to be about you. I think that's the number one difference. Impact Effect 24 isn't about Jim. It's not about Darryll. It's about you in that seat having an experience that will allow you to become the better leader, the leader that you know, wish, want, and love. So thanks, Darryll, for being here today, brother. I appreciate you. I'm excited for Impact Effect, September 17th and 18th here in Nashville, Tennessee. If you haven't grabbed your ticket, feel free to do so now, as we still have some remaining, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, y'all.
Peace.